Welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Skolman. Joining me right now is Max Cohen. This is our post-match show of Fulham's 1-1 draw against West Ham at Craven Cottage on Saturday. Max and I will be going through this in the next 45 minutes to 60 minutes based on how we feel about talking about this match anymore, because it is disappointing how it ended, but I think there's a good amount to talk about in regards to it. If you're watching live, feel free to share who was your man of the match. I'll get Max's at the end of the show, and I'll share mine as well. I do want to mention to please do check out the Cottage Talk Patreon page. Please do check that out. And also, please do check out our YouTube channel. You'll see the scroll. If you want any more information on that, please do check that out. Okay, Mr. Cohen, I'll go to you first. Give me your opening thoughts on this 1-1 draw. You and I were talking off air a little bit about it. I think me and you might differ how we feel about it a little bit. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think it's the worst way to end a match at the Cottage is having the opposing fans just going absolutely berserk, celebrating a last-minute goal, in an undeserved one at that. And the way we just switched off in that final moment across the entire defense, everyone's culpable, I think, and the holding midfielders is just it's one of those things you wish you had back, because we were so close to getting the 3 points, which would have been a great 3 points for us, which we deserved. Let me just say it that way, right?
Yep.
We were the better team from minute 0 to 93, and 94th minute, just an unprofessional moment. But there were flashes in there that showed that we can play with teams who are going to be quality. West Ham, although we did do the double over them last year, they're a good side, Russ. They have great players. They've had a very busy transfer window, and we bossed them, you could argue. But I mean, to give it up like that at the end, when literally we just remarked this, Leno had nothing to do, and we were so close. It felt like one of those games when you see it out, and that's it, 1-0. And the quick throw and the cut back, and then Leno letting it, you just kind of trickle into the goal. It was a sickening way to end what should have been a positive 90 minutes.
Totally agree with that point, Max. I do want to mention that our co-host Yanis was not able to join us today. Hopefully Yanis will be able to join us next week, because we always enjoy doing it as the three of us. So I do hope Yanis will join us next week. Okay, Max, so my opening thoughts are this. I'm glad that you mentioned that. I don't think that West Ham deserved anything from that. I mean that. As you said, we bossed the game. I've seen these situations many times. And for me, the way that I look at it, yes, it's very disappointing. Yes, those supporters of West Ham are going crazy, and it feels terrible in your stomach that you gave up that goal with a momentary lapse of judgment at the very end of the match. And I'll be sharing that in our Cottage Talk talking points. But when I look at it, and I'm glad that you talked about this too, Max, West Ham United, I've heard so much talk about how good they're going to be this year. They have so many quality players. They have not put it together yet. Neither have Fulham. So that is what I take out of this, that you took a team that everyone says is going to be fighting for Europe, and it took them to the 95th minute for you to turn off for just a second, for them to get something out of it that I don't feel they deserved. So for me, there are many more positives to take out of this 1-1 draw than negatives. And one thing to take out of this is that none of those players are going to want that taste in their mouth again. So maybe, just maybe, they will learn from this the next time they're in this situation. So there are things to take out of it that you can, as me being the optimist, spin and say, listen, we don't want this to happen again. What happened against West Ham? So you can point to that. And hopefully they talk about this on Monday. We're recording this on Sunday. Most clubs, they review the match prior and then they move on. So hopefully they will figure out and look at what went wrong, Max. And then they can look forward to Tuesday night in the Carabao Cup against Preston North End. I do want to mention that on the Cottage Talk Patreon page, just want to mention this. If you are a member, you will actually get an exclusive interview that I'm doing with a journalist who covers Preston North End. I'm recording that Monday, and I'll be sharing that to the Patreon members. So I just want to mention the paid members on the Patreon page. So some good stuff coming your way. But that's, again, how I feel as we look forward to Preston North End. You review the match and then you move on. You get ready for that. And then you get ready for Newcastle United. I watched them today. I saw the match, and I think that there's a good opportunity to right some wrongs against that club. But I understand if supporters are feeling down about the match. I went to a 3-3 draw at Reading, and it felt terrible. But that was 12 years ago, Max. And I'm telling you right now, there were probably 12 situations that have happened since then in those 12 years that were just like what happened yesterday. I'm used to it a little bit, but it's so early in the season. I just take more positives out of this.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to look at it that, this team is still gelling. Let's, not forget that Anderson made his first, league
That's
start,
right.
which is big. And Jimenez started up front. So, this is not a team which has played together a lot. Reece Nelson came off the bench, looked lively, looked like he could be a difference maker. And, although we gave up the late equalizer,
Yep.
we could have had 3 or 4 goals.
That's right.
In this match. And I think I have to say, Emil Smith-Rowe looked the best I've seen him so far. So, yeah, it's a lot of factors which can give you optimism that things are clicking, things going in the right direction. But it's still tough to take what happened at the end.
Of course it is. And we're going to go through some of these. You've just talked about a few of them that will be in the Cottage Talk talking points for this match. So let's start with the first one, Max, and you nailed the first one. The missed opportunities for Fulham came back to bite them in this match. Now, I'm looking right at Adama Traore because Tony Gale said on 2 occasions, you got to score there. You got to score there. And there were other opportunities as well. But when you have these opportunities against a quality side, you have to score, Max. And it came back to bite them.
Yeah, but let's say it's not just Traore.
No, it's not just Traore. It's not.
Yeah. And he should have had a stone cold 100% penalty.
Yep. That goes along with this. Yep.
I don't know how VAR did not overturn the call because Kilman just pushes him over, no attempt at the ball. That's a pen. But also, the other thing that stands out to me is when Smith-Rowe had that shot which hit off Jimenez second half.
Yeah.
I thought that was going in the back of the net, and it just hits their own player, our own striker. I get strikers have an eye for goal, and they want to be in the box, but got to get out of the way. That was unlucky. But there were chances. You're right, Russ, and it's a cliche, but you got to get the second goal when you're on top.
Absolutely.
And this is another situation when you look at, I think the biggest issue right now at Fulham is goals. And it was the same thing we said last year around this time was where the goal is going to come from. Now, I don't think it's a crisis mode yet, and I think we have to give credit to Raul Jimenez for getting a great finish in that goal. A lot of conversation was spent about Muniz, Jimenez. Is Muniz the right option? And we have to say, Jimenez first start of the season, first goal of the season. Excellent,
right.
Superb stuff. But around him, there has to be more players chipping in because our central strikers aren't as lethal as Mitrovic was. And as a club, we got too reliant on Mitrovic, and we haven't replaced him. We tried to replace him with attacking players out wide and maybe an attacking midfield, in addition to what strikers can do. But when you lose it, when you give up 2 points in a match that you should have won, and you only score 1 goal at home with however many great shots on target, it's frustrating.
It is, Max. And I'm glad that you brought up the Mitrovic situation because I've given this some thought. And if you look at some other clubs that don't have like a real striker up front, listen, Fulham are not Arsenal, okay? But they don't have that striker. Even Liverpool, Mo Salah is not a striker. He's a winger. So they don't really have that prototype striker. They do it by several players. And Fulham, I'm not saying that that's what you should do, but I also thought that Fulham depended way too much on Mitro. And I think what is going on right now is a situation that maybe doesn't look ideal at the time right now, but maybe by the end of the season, you're going to say, well, the goals have been split up by several players and your strikers score goals. I think you can be more dangerous as a team if you score goals as a team, not just focus on one player. So I think in a way, this is forcing other players to step up, but they need to step up. And it's easy to look at this match and say, well, they didn't step up. They don't get enough goals from the striker position, but they also need to get goals from other places. I think that Marco wants other players to score. I don't think he wants it just to be one player, that one focus like Mitro. I think he would prefer to have the goals split up in other places. And I think Fulham are set up that way. I think in the end, Fulham are going to be more dangerous. It just doesn't look like that. It's not the finished product, Max. It just isn't. One thing I want to do before we move on from this talking point, because it goes along with you mentioning the penalty. That's a penalty. That is a penalty. I've seen it called too many times. That's a penalty. The ref in this match was horrific, Max. Your thoughts on the ref?
He got the one major situation wrong. The one situation he needed to step up and make a call. He didn't do it. But VAR should have stepped in. That wasn't making any sense. That's what we have the system in place for. Is when the ref can't do his job, we have a whole team of people behind the scenes correcting it. And there was no correcting, which was just baffling. But yeah, I mean, if you get a penalty, 15 minutes in the match, get a goal, 1-0, Jimenez scores a couple minutes later, we kill that off. That's 2-0. It's easy. Maybe we even do a 5-0 like last year.
Okay. Well, it's funny because in my 5 takeaways, I said, don't be surprised if that doesn't happen at the end of the season, or that we have another result like that. Don't be surprised, because I think there could be building towards that again. But who knows? I would love to see another 5-0, and 2 5-0s would be great. Before we move on, I want to share some comments. This is from Trevor Standard. He says, Lukic has stepped up. I totally agree on that. I think he's made that position his own. So for me, I totally agree with you, Trevor. This is from our friend June here. He says, was it Craven Cottage yesterday? It was gut-wrenching stuff at the end. It was, and I feel bad for all the Fulham supporters that had to deal with it. We've all dealt with it before, but I thought, again, Fulham gave it everything that they could. They just had that momentary lapse, and it comes back to bite them. They didn't score a second goal. Again, it is gut-wrenching. I'm there with you. I certainly understand that. Okay, Max, let's move on to Cottage Talk, talking point number 2. The subs by West Ham made a huge difference in the second half. Now, it's still a reactive situation by Lopetegui, but he brings on Somerville and Paqueta. And in the first half, I thought West Ham couldn't do anything. Fulham were completely dominant. These 2 players come on, everything changes a little bit. Not that West Ham were dominant, Max. They were not, but it became more even. The flow was more even when they came on. They didn't take over the second half. That did not happen. If anyone says that, I don't know what match you were watching. That didn't happen. But they changed the match. Your thoughts?
100%. I think Somerville was excellent in terms of getting their counters started. He was someone who even had the ball deep into his own half. He makes one pass, makes a forward-looking run, and we're looking nervous. And Paquetá is, one of their best players. He played both matches for Brazil. Didn't go too well for Brazil in the international break, but he played. So I think that was probably the reason he didn't start. But he's a very skilled player, someone who, was really close to making a move to Man City a couple of windows ago. So you can make players like that, of that quality off the bench. It's going to change it. And then the sub itself, which led to the goal, Danny Ings. To be honest, I forgot he was at West Ham. I forgot.
So did I, actually.
They signed Krug. They have Antonio. I'm thinking, where's his playing time? Where's his opportunity to score? And he proved a lot of people wrong in that match. And I think players like that are just so lethal. I mean, he scored goals that season at Southampton a couple years ago with 20 plus goals, exceptional. And he's a point to prove, because you could argue he could be playing for a team near around the bottom of the table, starting every match, playing every game automatically. So, credit to Lopetegui, he made the right subs, but that's the quality of West Ham's team. They've commanded a really big transfer outlay in recent windows.
Yep.
That makes our outlay look like nothing. But that's what you can do when you've been in the Prem for, consistent, 7, 8, 9. I can't remember I think they've been in the Premier League since 2013, 2012, that kind of era. With no relegations, you build that up. And obviously they have a big stadium. They have a fan base. We can get there, I think, 5-ish years, but we don't have the budget or the draw yet to sign players like Mohamed Kudus, who I think is excellent.
He's excellent.
Edson Alvarez. They got a Carlos Soler from PSG. These are quality players. Kilman. I mean, I think Kilman didn't play great, but he's an exciting signing, probably going to be England international. So
Right. But Max, I'm glad that you're naming the players, just the names. Okay. The fact that it took this team to the 95th minute to get a point off of Fulham and honestly didn't deserve it just shows the progression I think I'm seeing from our club. That's the way I look at it. Of course, it's disappointing. I'm going to share this comment from Chris Mullings because he's actually right about this. Disappointing to throw away 3 points. First 4 games sweep have lost 3 points, 2+1 in the last minute of games. It's the Manchester United game and this game. If we hadn't have lost these 3 points, we'd be top 5. So pauses if we can keep hold of results. Just think about that. Think about it if they won this match or if they got a draw against Manchester United, where we would be. But that also shows where we can be. And that's the way that I'm looking at it. I see the positives, Max. I know people don't always look at it the way I do, but I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking that I remember where we were last season and how we were feeling about this team because it looks so disjointed. It does not look like that. We're watching the matches. I'm seeing the progression already 4 matches in. I'm seeing it. And I'm telling you, it's going to come. That's why that 5-0 victory that they had twice last season, I'm not ruling out that it could happen again because I think once they put it all together, they're going to take maybe 1 or 2 teams to the woodshed, as we would say over here. Okay. I truly believe that. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's a great way to look at things is that we could be in a totally different situation at the table if we just don't switch off at the end.
Right.
But the wave after wave of attack that we saw on Saturday is positive. I think you're right.
Right.
This is not a team that's struggling to create chances.
No.
Which I think you'd probably rather have the problem of not finishing your chances than not creating any chances at all. And that's where we are. And again, I think, with the key players we brought in, probably chief of those is Smith Rowe.
Right.
Finding time to mesh, to get involved with the team. Also, you could even add Traore to that kind of new signing-ish mold because he barely played last year, really.
He barely played.
So logic is the longer the season goes on, the better these players can get an understanding for where they are in attacking areas. And we even saw that. I think one of the best plays or best type of play we had yesterday was the kind of the crossing. I thought the in-swing crosses were great. Traore, leapt up, could have done better. But, Smith Rowe got his goal after running to the end line and swinging a ball in. It's type of play which is not just kind of what we saw under Mitrovic, which is just kind of lump it in from the wings at every opportunity. This is more sophisticated.
It is, Max. And I'm glad that you brought up Mitro, and I'm going to just hammer this through to people that are listening. There is no Mitro anymore. There's no Paulinho. And I think Fulham have become so dependent on those 2 players. I'm not saying that they're better because these are elite players, but now it's about the sum of the parts. It's absolutely about the sum of the parts. I'm not saying that they're going to be better than when they had Mitro or Paulinho. It's just going to be different. And I think you can build on this. So that's where I'm going on this because, listen, like everyone else, I'm thinking, how do you overcome the loss of Mitro? Well, most clubs would have been relegated losing Mitro, right? How do you overcome the loss of Paulinho? Most clubs would be thought of going to be in the relegation zone this season. Not Fulham. There's a reason for it. A lot has to do with the players, also the coach. We're that far into our progression now. It's not the same club. That's why when I look at this and I'm disappointed, just like everyone else, I can see the positives to come out of it. And that's why I'm focusing more on that. And that's going to lead us to talk about a player that I think is going to help Fulham and will give Marco headaches because now he has to figure out how to get him involved. Reece Nelson showed glimpses of what he could offer Fulham, Max. So let's talk a little bit about this. It is a cameo, but I could just see how dynamic he could potentially be. So now you could have a player like Reece Nelson on one side, Iwobi on the other side, maybe Traore and Nelson, maybe you mix and match, but you can play around having this player. This player's, I think is going to eventually start at some point. What are your thoughts about Reece Nelson's short performance for Fulham against West Ham?
Yeah, I mean, he looks like someone who came through one of the best academies and played for one of the best teams in England, which is true.
Yep.
But he's so right-footed, and I think that's something that stood out to me immediately. I haven't seen a lot of Reece Nelson when he played for Arsenal because he was barely fit, but
right.
I mean, the position he took up every time he was on the left wing, it's like right foot, looking to cut in, but in a way which is exciting. He's always, on his toes and always looking dangerous. He's a direct player. I think sometimes wingers nowadays are too content just to kind of pass the ball back and keep possession. He's someone who can run at players and make something out of nothing. He had a good shot that went through a player's legs, but was not quite in the corner enough. He brought energy, Rust. I think that was the main thing. And we know he has it as a locker, almost like a Manor Solomon, where he can cut on the right foot and just curl that. He was just waiting to unleash one. And if you give him a full 90 minutes, who knows what he could do.
That's what I watched. And I'm just thinking to myself, let's see what happens when he really starts to mesh again with his former teammate, Emil Smith-Rowe, when that thing starts to come together. I think that we have a player here that can really help Fulham. So, again, in a very small, short span of time, I was encouraged by what I saw from Reece Nelson. So I think that's a major talking point to take out of this. I think this is a massive one, too. Okay, I'm telling you right now, he's my man of the match. Joachim Andersen showed why Marco wanted him back at Fulham. Because you now have this ball-carrying center back, leader back there, but you also have the ability to change the play very quickly with his passing ability. It is wonderful to see him back. And I just think that he changes Fulham defensively. I think he's going to change Calvin Bassey too. Nothing against Diop. I'm not saying Diop's not a leader, but Andersen is a true leader back there. You now have someone that is going to take charge. And it doesn't have to come down to Calvin Bassey. It now, I believe, will be more on the shoulders of Andersen. I thought he was excellent in this match, Max. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there was one opportunity towards the end when really dangerous in-swing cross.
Yeah.
And he's there just to head it right above goal. And it was almost like what we saw during Anfield away the season he was here on loan, just kind of knowing how to throw himself in front of the ball in dangerous areas. When any other defender might have scored an own goal, he has that extra knack of just getting the ball out of danger. Yeah, and the other part of his game, as you said, is a distribution, which is a must in the modern Premier League, a must. And Issa Diop, I don't think has played poorly per se recently, but that's not part of his game.
No, it's not.
The Premier League, where it's a cruel business. It's not easy to keep your spot. And Andersen just is a more complete player than Diop. So seeing him come in the starting lineup wasn't a surprise. I'm glad he's there. He's captain material.
Absolutely.
I'm delighted he's back here. And, him and Bassey, that's a young, exciting center back partnership.
And that's the way I look at it. Nothing against how Issa Diop played. Did he deserve to be dropped? Did he do anything wrong? The answer is no, he did nothing wrong. But I've been a big advocate of play your best player at a position to help you win. They didn't win. They had a chance to win. And I think Joachim Andersen was a big part of that, Max. That's why I wanted to focus on him, because I just think that now, when you look defensively, I think that also helps the situation with someone like Lukic, who will be protecting the back four. Having this player being a captain back there, a captain type, we should say, he's not a captain, but being a leader back there, I think is only going to help him as well. And I think Lukic will step up. I think this player will make other players around him better. And you can't say that about every player. I think you can say that about Joachim Andersen. I think the players around him will get better. So for me, massive signing. I know there are some that weren't so crazy about it because they don't like going back to the past maybe. But I think this was a great move for Fulham, bringing back Joachim Andersen. They upgraded from Tosin. Absolutely upgraded. This is a massive upgrade. I think this is going to help Fulham all season long. Okay, Max, final talking point. Kind of already talked about it, but let's finish up talking about this. That is 2 points drop, but Fulham are edging closer to putting it all together. So what I mean by this is that The way it ended hurts a great deal. We've already talked about it. It is 2 points dropped. I don't feel West Ham deserved anything from it. But I can see the forest for the trees, and I could see that they're not the finished article yet. They're absolutely not. We haven't even seen Sander Berge starting yet. You don't pay all that money, Max, for him to be on the bench. He'll be a starter at some point. So we have to see how all the pieces are going to fit. But once they do, I think we're going to be in good shape. So that's the way I'm looking at it. So your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is what we were talking about for most of the start is that it's a positive sign, and this team has potential. We're waiting for the new signings to mesh. We're waiting for the finishing to come true, but there's no shame playing against West Ham like that.
No.
There is shame in the way we conceded, but the overall performance gives a lot of room for positivity.
Absolutely. And I just want to mention all of these talking points were actually, Max, my 5 takeaways from the match that I put on the Patreon page. So I thought it'd be an easy transition. I made these statements, but I wanted to get your views on it. So thank you so much for sharing your views on these talking points. Okay. Let's go to the starting 11. So this comes out. I like that it comes out earlier now, Max. So share your thoughts on that too. But
Yeah,
we get the starting 11. Yeah,
we're impatient. We're impatient. We like to see stuff early. Great.
Okay, so we get the starting 11, and I'm thinking to myself, one, I was surprised that he started Anderson, but obviously the biggest surprise was Raul Jimenez starting. What do you think about that? Because I felt it might have been a little harsh on Rodrigo Muniz. Now, I thought he needed at least one more game to start before he was pulled. Marco thought different. Maybe it was he thought because Jimenez played well against West Ham last season that he thought, okay, this is where I'm going, and I could understand that. But that was a surprise to me. It was Jimenez, not as much Anderson, but I was still a little pleasantly surprised by Anderson.
Let's look at it this way. When was the last time Muniz scored a goal?
Oh, it's been a while.
Right?
Yeah, it's been a while. It's a good point.
Rodrigo Muniz had an amazing spring. Probably one of the best 2 months we've seen in recent memory from a Fulham striker. Everything he touched turned to gold. And I'm thinking about that Tottenham Hotspur match against Spurs. He was unplayable. Yep. Since then, I think you can make the argument, a very convincing one. He hasn't done enough to get the starting spot. He just hasn't done enough. He's not been bad. He hasn't done enough. Jimenez, I could even flip it and say, Jimenez has been hard done by not to start any of the first 3 matches of the season. Now, the only reason we're not saying that is because Jimenez isn't exactly a lethal striker either. And as a fan base, Fulham fans have decided, I think rightly, that he's not the answer. But, I mean, if we had someone better than Jimenez on the bench, I think we'd hear massive calls for Muniz to be dropped. The issue is we just don't have someone who's that much better. But I think what we're seeing here, Russ, is something of a 2-striker system. I don't think we have a guaranteed number. After what I saw against West Ham, I think Jimenez did a great service to himself by scoring that goal. Because now he says to Marco Silva, look, I've scored. I'm the only striker that I've scored this year. Drop me against Newcastle. It's gonna be a hard argument to make to say the guy who just came into the starting 11 and got that goal should be dropped. So there's no one number 9 who has ownership on that starting spot in the lineup right now.
Okay, well, I don't know if I want to see him against Newcastle from what happened last season at St. James's Park. You forgot about that, right, Matt? Because that changed our season. Let's just
don't go into any tackles. Pull out of every single tackle. That's the pre-match instructions.
Okay. I want to share this comment from our friend Brian. He has a couple. And it says, need a striker in January. It follows it up. Strong strikers draw defenders and free up our other attacking players. I understand that, Brian. It's a good point. Listen, I'm one that had said that I wanted them to bring in a striker, especially with the Jay Stansfield situation. Carlos Vinicius is going to be part of the mix. We've heard talk from Marco about that. Sorry, that's not good enough. I'm not going to disagree with you, Brian, but I don't think that the manager sees it the way we see it. Same thing like last season. I don't think that they were clamoring at the transfer window for a striker. They didn't try hard enough last summer to bring in a striker. They lose Mitro. They didn't bring anyone in, and then you got the Broya situation in January. Could I see something happening? Wow. Yeah, I completely forgot about him, and I'm glad that I forgot about him because he did nothing for us. but a lot of that has to do with Rodrigo Muniz. But what are your thoughts? Are you on the bandwagon? Hey, Russ, we need a striker.
I agree with Brian. I do. I think January is not the best time to buy, but it needs to be a priority because I'm not going to criticize the transfer policy too much because what we have done is strengthen in basically every other area of the pitch. And I could
This
argue
is
that
true.
it's a holding midfielder. And I think I did say this earlier in the season, a holding mid and a center half were probably higher priorities in terms of playing well in the Premier League. Those situations, that spine of the team where we lost Palhinha, lost Tosin, that probably need to be replaced more than an upgrade up top, in my opinion. So I think the club did the right thing. And we don't have unlimited money, and we're not the biggest club in the world. We can't buy everyone like Chelsea can, probably for better. But we need to address this area. And I think the most likely thing in my mind is next summer we get in that's our big target. And maybe we spend crazy money, 40, 50 million on an exciting striker. Who that person is, I have no idea. I thank God I'm not Tony Khan. I'm not in charge of transfers. But I think this year, not unfortunately, but I think we'll stay up. But this position, this striker issue, is a reason I don't think we're going to get top 8 or even top 10.
Okay, and that's what many supporters have told me because that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I predicted, but it could be what holds Fulham back. I'm not going to disagree with that. I do want to mention that I agree with your analysis. I think bringing in Berga and Anderson was massive for Fulham. That was very important. They did both of that. They absolutely did. And Berga will either play the 6 or the 8. We'll see how that all plays out. And then, of course, you upgraded with Anderson. The one thing that I will tell people, I don't know how many watched Wolves today. Now, I saw Andre play, and Andre looks like a player that really can move the play forward. But I got to tell you, I don't think he is Marco Silva's type of player. He is tiny. He is small. So I don't know if that's a factor why the whole Andre thing never really materialized. I don't know if he's really Marco Silva's type of player based on what I watched today. He is going to be a very good player for Wolves. I'm not saying that he's not. I just think that maybe for what Marco wants, I think Berga's the better fit. And I think that that's what and of course you have Lukic who has stepped up. I actually think they're going to be fine with their situation with, like you said, with a holding midfielder. I just think it's going to be different than what it was under Paulie. It's just, everything's going to be different, but that's okay. There are other ways to win matches. That's the way I look at it. All right, Max. Coming up next, we are going to the second half of the show where we're going to analyze the first half and the second half, and we will finish with man of the match. Okay, Max, let's get to it. Let's talk about the first half. I'll share my thoughts, and then we will stop on the goal because I want to get your thoughts on this truly, really great goal from Fulham. But overall, Fulham dominated the first half. I can't get past that. I thought West Ham were by far second best, and Fulham dictated everything that happened. Like I said, I've heard all about these great players, all about the manager, Lopetegui, and he basically got it wrong to the point where he had to change it at halftime. That was basically telling Marco Silva, you got it right and I got it wrong. Because I think they had a chess match going on in this match, and Marco certainly won the first half. The second half, like I said, it was even. It was more even. But for me, when I looked at the first half, I go back to how I started the talking points, the missed opportunities, a couple like we already talked about from Adama Traore. I think the unfortunate situation that they did not get a penalty because I think that gets called more often than not. But overall, they deserve that 1-0 lead and probably should have had more. Maybe that's what we end up with 1-1, Max. But let's stop at the goal. Give me your thoughts on the goal and then analyze the entire first half.
Pereira with a great chip through ball, perfectly weighted, because I think I see Smith Rowe running on that. I think that's probably going to go out, but he showed great pace, great close control to keep it in. And then the ball is just exceptional. This is my favorite type of cross is a cutback because it takes so many defenders out of the match. We saw the same thing in the, frankly, for the West Ham equalizer, the
Yep.
danger of a cutback rather than across, from further up the pitch. It's just so much more dangerous. And all Jimenez had to do, and he still had a lot to do, to be fair, but all the pace is on the ball from Smith Rowe, and it's perfectly in his path. Doesn't have to break stride, and it's a great left-footed just sweep by Areola. Very pleasing on the eye. Exactly the type of football we want to be playing, because get the wingers involved, get the striker making a run towards goal. And Pereira with just really that's just a high quality ball, just really well weighted. And it's not easy to play that kind of pass. Yeah, in terms of the first half in general, you said it best. Leno didn't have to do a thing, basically.
No,
Totally untroubled.
nothing.
We dominated, and it should have been more.
It should have been more, and that turns out to be the downfall. That's the sucker punch. The sucker punch is that you did enough to win the game, but you got sucker punched in the end. You did. You should have won the game, but you didn't, because you did not get that second goal. So that's the way I look at it. And maybe they should have scored a third as well. There were opportunities there, and they just need to be more clinical with those opportunities. I just want to share this from Gus. He says, we couldn't find a yogurt. We couldn't finish a yogurt. Sorry, there's a Goldman for you. So that, to me, we just couldn't. We absolutely could not. Okay, Max, let's transition. Let's talk about the second half. Like I had mentioned, Lopetegui makes a couple of changes. I think it changed things. But Fulham, I thought, came out pretty good. They did create some opportunities. And then you had West Ham looking more dangerous. As you already mentioned, you have that opportunity from Bowen, but Leno's right there, takes care of it. If you want to hold your hat, if you're a West Ham supporter, and say, wow, we had that opportunity. And then you had the shot from Paqueta that went over. And then, of course, you have the goal. And we'll talk about the goal in the end, which is very disappointing. We've already talked a little bit about it, but I want to go into a little bit more detail on it. But I also want to mention, Max, that in the end, listen, Fulham were creating opportunities at the very end. Of course, you have the Calvin Bassey situation, but before that, they were creating opportunities. So it wasn't like they didn't have these opportunities in the second half. They did. They weren't wonderful opportunities, but they were creating things. And so it wasn't this one-sided second half. It absolutely was not. But they get the sucker punch in the end, Max. So let's just talk about the sucker punch, and then we'll go back and we'll analyze your thoughts on the second half.
In terms of the goal, there's no danger at all, basically 30 seconds before it. The ball's all the way in the right back position for West Ham, and I think there are 2 or 3 Fulham players doing a really good job of pressing, which I like to see. In stoppage time, something which often happens with Fulham is that we sit really deep and invite pressure. But what happened in that phase of play was we were actually pressing them. We were pegging them back, and the right back, I forgot who was in the moment, name was Emerson Wan-Bissaka, was forced to kind of hit a hopeful ball up the line, not to find anyone, but just to relieve pressure, because he was going to lose the ball in his own defensive area. I didn't see the replay. I haven't really understood it since. I thought that should have been our throw. I didn't think it took a nick off a Fulham player. Obviously, the ref calls it. And by that point, the rest is just awful, because Robinson gets totally caught. He forgets there's no offside in the throw-in. Bowen's a class player. I mean, Bowen, I think, is one of the really underrated player. I don't mean to be, biased against the big sides, because we don't like doing that, but he could realistically play for a top team.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's that good. And I think everyone at Fulham, all the defenders are just thinking that ball's going out. We'll see it out. And that's the last thing you want as a defender is to be hoping that a situation happens, because they're all reacting. And he fizzes it in with great pace. And Anderson and Berger make a mess of it, frankly. They're both in the vicinity, but neither of them are doing anything in terms of actually defending. And it's a good strike from Mings. Leno gets a lot on it, to be fair. I know it's hit hard and low, but he probably should do a little bit better. And it's just sickening altogether.
It is, Max. Like I said, it's hard to watch. I've seen it too many times. Maybe I'm just numb to these situations, but it shouldn't have happened, but it did. And the match ends 1-1. But I want to go back into talking about the second half and talk about a theme that we've talked about a lot. Me, you, and Giannis, we've talked about the substitutions, the late substitutions. And I know there are going to be Fulham supporters that don't want to hear me saying this, But I'm ready to move on from Tom Kearney. I'm ready to move on from him. Not that he still can't do a job, but I think he is starting really to show his age. Just like, sorry, Brian, Tim Ream showed his age. The legs aren't there anymore. We saw it against Manchester United. He's also very much one-footed, as we already know. Can't really use his other foot. But the substitutions, as happens a lot with Marco, are reactive. And I understand bringing on Reed and Kearney. I guess I understand it, but I don't think it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not totally. I have a different view on Kearney, to be honest, Russ.
Okay, go ahead.
I still think he has a useful role in this team, but I think
Okay.
you have a good point in terms of it's not really the right situation to bring him on when you're protecting a lead. I think he has a role in this team, but it's probably more when you're chasing a match and want someone to give more calmness in midfield while you go all out attack rather than protecting. That's just Kearney's more attacking player, simple as that. So
right.
I think it probably wasn't the best substitution in this situation, but I think I think Kearney still has a role to play here. But yeah, I can see what Marco was doing. He wants someone on the ball who can give composure and control the flow of play better, but it didn't work out the way he thought. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think Kearney was that off the pace compared to, I don't know. The real situation that gets me is we had the ball in the right wing attacking area, and instead of going to the corner, we try to play a through ball, and that's just not match awareness in stoppage time.
I agree there, my friend. All right, let's end this show with man of the match. I've already told you who my man of the match is. If you're watching live, feel free to share who is your man of the match. Mine is Joachim Andersen. Who's yours?
Ooh, it's a tough one. I'm leaning towards Jimenez because he scored, but I don't think he was involved that much outside of it. And I want to say Traore because I think he had a great game in terms of getting involved, but he missed some chances. I'll go Raul Jimenez. The mentality from a striker who hasn't started all season to make his first start and get a goal in his first start. I'll give him credit for that. And he probably put himself back in the starting lineup next week.
Okay, very good. Let's see if we have any other comments. This is from I was going to see if our friend Brian gave us a man of the match. So I think that's all we have with man of the match, Max. I do want to mention before we end this show that I actually will be interviewing a journalist who covers Preston North End. His name's George Hodson, and I don't know if any relation to Roy, but I'll be interviewing him on Monday, and that will actually be on the Cottage Talk Patreon page for paid members. So please, if you're a paid member, be on the lookout. And I just want to say one last time, thank you to all the paid members. And if you're not, please do check out the Cottage Talk Patreon page. All right, Max, before we go, any final thoughts?
Worst possible way to end the match, but I definitely feel better after talking it through with you. In terms of the
that's what I do.
Yeah, it's what you do. This is why we love Cottage Talk. It's the best post Fulham therapy session, and we can kick on the rest of the season. I'm curious to see what happens in Preston. We'll see some players who aren't in the fold get some action, maybe build a cup run, and then a big test will be Newcastle United next weekend, who are on flying form.
Okay, very good. All right. We do have a comment from Brian. He is actually going with Anderson like me. Great minds think alike, and should get armband too. I'm not against that. What are your thoughts about that? Should he become captain?
Maybe in the future, but he's a new signing, just got to the club.
He's been there before.
Yeah, but come on, he was a loan signing 4 seasons ago, so I think it's fine. I think it's fine where he is now, but we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. Before we go, Max and I will be back for another show with Giannis. Hopefully next week we can all do another show together. The one thing that I will say, not having Giannis here, we do not have any reference to a player that used to play for Fulham, and I'm not going to mention his name. I'll give you the initials FY. There's been no reference. I want to say, Max, before we go, almost every show he gets that in. Almost every show.
He's the only person keeping up the Floyd Aite fan club, and it's a lonely task, but we respect him for it.
Yeah. And of course, there's a goal for you. I said FY, it's FA, Russ. There you go. Good one, Russ. Good one to end the show. Okay. Max, thank you so much for doing this. I hope you enjoyed it.
Great show as always. Thanks guys for listening in, and please get on Russ's Patreon page. I did it. My family did it. It's the best thing you can do. Support Russ does, and it's a steal. $5 is nothing for all the great content you get. So do it.
Thank you, Max. I really appreciate that. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. My name's Russ Goldman. He's Max Cohen. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, part of the Talk Sport Fan Network.